In this video, I'd like to continue talking about extending geometric sequences. Specifically though, when the common ratio of these sequences is either a negative or a fraction. So with all of these sequences, they're going to be multiplicative. We know that going from one term to the next, that we're going to be multiplying by some common ratio. And let's just call it A. So every step from one term to the next, we're going to be multiplying by some number, which we call the common ratio, and we've labeled that number equal to A. So to figure that out, we can essentially set up an equation and look for a pattern. So we know that we're starting at 54, that's our first term, and we're multiplying by some common ratio. So multiplied by A, we know that we're going to get 36, our next term. So to find that common ratio, we can just take 36 and divide it by 54, since that's how you'd solve this equation. So dividing each side by 54, you get 36 over 54, and then you just have to simplify this fraction. And for instance, we can notice each of these numbers is divisible by 9. They're also divisible by 6. But let's just do 9. And 36 divided by 9 is 4. 54 divided by 9 is 6. And 4 over 6, these are each even numbers, which we can divide each of them by 2 to find that common ratio of 2/3. Now, to figure out the common ratio, we didn't have to use the first two numbers. In fact, what we covered in the last video is that you can choose any number and then divide it by the number before it. So we could have also taken 24 and divided it by the term before that, 36. And noticing each of these is divisible by 12, you would also get 2/3. So that common ratio stays the same when multiplying from one term to the next throughout any of the terms in the sequence. So what we need to do here is figure out what our next term is. So we can take 24 and multiply it by that common ratio of 2/3. And 24 divided by 3 is 8. And 8 times 2 is 16. So 16 would be the next term of that sequence. And if we wanted, we could keep going. We would just have to take 16 and multiply that by 2/3. And 16 times 2 is 32. And so we have 32/3. 3 goes into 30 10 times, so this is really 10 and 2/3 if we wanted to rewrite it as a mixed number. But we can just write 32/3 there. So we could keep going. Every step, we're just going to multiply by that common ratio, A, which we found was 2/3. So let's keep this in mind and focus on some other practice problems. So in this one, we have a negative involved. But remember, to find that common ratio, we're just going to pick one of the numbers in the sequence, so maybe -10, and we're going to divide it by the number before that, 20 in this case. And then simplify that fraction if you have one. So -10 over 20, these are each divisible by 10. So dividing them both by 10, you would get -1/2. But notice that we could have also taken 5 and divided that by the term before it, which was -10, and you would still get this -1/2 as the common ratio. So to figure out our next term, we're going to take 5 and we're going to multiply it by -1/2. And 5 times -1/2 would be -5/2. If we put it over 1 and multiply straight across, and -5/2 is really -2.5. And this one's a little bit easier to see, since really we're just dividing by 2 each step of the way, and the sign is going back and forth. So in another sense, we're dividing by -2. So our next term would be positive, and then we just divide 2.5 by 2, or cut it in half, and we get positive 1.25. And again, this would extend forever, but every step we're going to be multiplying by that -1/2 or dividing by -2, since those are equivalent. So in the next video, we're going to look at two difficult problems where we're mainly going to have fractions.